In Rome, thousands of people are lining up at the Vatican City to pay their respects and see the Pope for one last time. Emma has been following that line this morning. Good morning, Emma, or good evening to you. What's it like there where you are?
I have to say, it almost feels like there are more people this evening than there were this afternoon when we came. I just want to give you a bit of a show of exactly what the lineup is like. And I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a slight round of applause as well that's happening too. So we've got thousands of people who are lining up here. They've been lining up for at least a couple of hours. In fact, the line has closed, but it's going to take quite some time for people to file into St. Peter's Basilica to pay their respects to Pope Francis. We spoke to some people this afternoon. They'd lined up for 4 hours to pay their respects. We spoke to someone earlier in the line and he said he'd been here for an hour already and he barely moved about 50 metres. But people are dedicated. They said however long it takes is how long it takes. We spoke to a couple of people before. Here's what they had to say.
Well, it might be a while, but I think it's a very historical event and I think it's a very big opportunity to be here.
It's the only opportunity I'm going to get to partake in an event like this, I imagine, in my lifetime.
Well, I've seen the Pope in Ireland, I've seen the Pope in the UK. It's very sad to see him now, he's dead, but that's...
Have you been surprised by the emotion that you've felt with this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's because it always seems so distant, but now it feels very real.
So we've seen people as they file past, some are taking photos, some are holding a photo of Pope Francis, or they're clutching rosary beads, they're wearing a crucifix, they're doing the sign of the cross. People are doing what they can to pay their respects. Earlier we saw the procession that brought Pope Francis from his Santa Marta residence chapel to St. Peter's Basilica. We saw cardinals, bishops, priests and the Swiss Guard who've been keeping watch over Pope Francis slowly march his coffin into St. Peter's Square, then into the Basilica. And as that happened, the crowd broke out into applause as his coffin was brought there and laid to rest. So Pope Francis will lie in state until Friday evening. So the St. Peter's will be open till at least midnight, if not beyond tonight, to allow people to move through. Midnight again Thursday night and then 7 p.m. Friday before his funeral on Saturday. Now we know that, of course, that his burial will be at the Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, and that's where our Europe correspondent Catherine Diss is right now. Catherine, what's happening there where you are at the moment?
Good evening, Emma. Well, look, as you mentioned, after that funeral on Saturday, Pope Francis will then be moved in a slow procession through the streets of Rome to here, the Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, where he's requested to be laid to rest. The Vatican telling us today that they expect that journey to be another opportunity for worshippers to say goodbye. And a short time ago, there was a rosary taking place behind me, offering worshippers another opportunity to be able to say goodbye to the late pontiff. That will happen every night until Saturday. Now, the Pope's choice to be buried here is another reflection of the way in which he approached the office, the simplicity with which he lived his life. He said that he chose this as his burial site because of his devotion to the Virgin Mary. He's also asked for a simple tomb with just the inscription Franciscus, which is his papal name in Latin. He's also revealed that he visited this church at the beginning and end of every apostolic trip during his 12 years in the papacy, which gives you an indication as to just how special this church was for the late pontiff.
Thanks, Catherine. Catherine Diss reporting there, and there have been people lining up there as well as people lining up here. The Vatican tells us that 19,500 people have filed past the Pope up until 8 p.m, and no doubt those numbers will escalate over coming days.